Welcome back. We are two dudes talking 80s. I'm John. That's my buddy Lewis.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some of the forgotten movies of the 80s. There's a lot of movies that have this incredible following even today, movies such as Karate Kid, E.T., The Shining. Um, Throw a couple others out there, Lou, that are real popular in this day and age.
Uh, uh,
Okay, thanks. So, Back to
Rocky,
the Future.
Rocky.
That was 70s, but that's all right. Back to the Future. That's another one. We're going to talk about some of those movies from the 80s that may not be that popular. Maybe you've seen them and forgotten about them, or maybe you've never seen them at all. But, we think they should be up there with any of the best of the 80s list. It's got to be more than Back to the Future and Scarface. So we're going to hopefully introduce you guys to some new 80s movies that you can check out and hopefully fall in love with like we did. Lou, I'm going to throw it over to you. What's your first one?
All right. Well, I'm going to start off with one that I initially didn't think actually fell in the 80s. I thought it was in the 70s. And it is one of my favorite movies. And I am talking about History of the World, Part One. And lots of people probably, it's a lot of people, I guess, have heard of it, and especially now with the advent of them coming up with a follow-up to it. After all of these years, they're talking about making a History of the World Part Two, where we finally get to see Hitler on ice. Looking forward to that. But it great movie with Mel Brooks, obviously, and just a star-studded cast of characters in there with Soupy Sales and Dom DeLuise and Madeline Kahn, and just really, really funny stuff. And like the first maybe 10 minutes of that movie is absolute gold. Absolute gold. If you just at least watch the first 10 minutes of that movie, you'll be rolling. If you're not, you're probably dead.
That's actually one of those movies I remember seeing and loving, and I just don't really revisit it that often. But that's a great choice. I think it's politically incorrect, and some people will be shocked by it. But it's definitely a very funny movie, and probably one I need to go back to. So, a good call on History of the World Part One, and I'll look forward to Hitler on Ice. Um, so if we're gonna do comedies that are inappropriate, I'll start with the gem. Let's face it, the '80s belonged to Kurt Russell. Okay, Kurt Russell had so many fantastic movies in the '80s. We always talk about The Thing, Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China. These phenomenal movies in the '80s, but no one really mentions this one, and I think it's just as good as any of them. And that's Used Cars, and that came out in the early 80s. Kurt Russell plays a used car salesman, and his boss owns the car lot. His brother owns the car lot across the street. And so there's this sibling rivalry. They don't get along. Hijinks ensue. They do some very illegal things where Kurt Russell conceives of this plan to cut in for these illegal commercials, and also very, very inappropriate. I remember my aunt, God rest her soul, she took me to see this, and I must have been like 11 or something at the time, and I just remember her laughter reverberating throughout the theater. And of course, it was probably at the most inappropriate scenes in all the movie. But it was hysterical. I can still watch it to this day. It's still funny. Kurt Russell, Used Cars. He owned the '80s. You got to give that one a look.
That's definitely one that I'll have to go back and watch. I think I've seen snippets of it. I know that most recently you sent me a snippet of where they're doing that commercial. They like took over the airwaves or something, and they did this the commercial.
With Lenny and
Um,
Squiggy.
yes, yes. So good stuff in there, man. Definitely good stuff. I'll have to go check that out. It looks very entertaining.
You won't be disappointed, I promise you. So are you going to stay with comedy for us, or what else you got?
Where do I want to go? Yeah, this is I'll go with I'll continue on the comedy vein here. This was pretty much comedy, I think. Movie that's rather famous. Again, you don't hear a lot about it nowadays, but lots of famous quotes from it. This one goes up to 11, being the the predominant one, but I'm talking about, of course, Spinal Tap. And again, sort of going with the Lenny and Squiggy thing, you've got it was Lenny that was, and I still can't remember the gentleman's name. Is Saint Hubbins is his last name. David Saint Hubbins, the patron saint of quality footwear. So great movie. I remember, John, you having me turn me on to this movie, and I'm watching it the first time and thinking, yeah, this is okay. This is not a big deal. And then after I watched it, I'm sort of thinking about the lines like, that was actually decent. Let me go watch that again. And this has also become one of my absolute favorite movies of the 80s.
Yeah, this is Spinal Tap is definitely one of those fantastic movies you can watch over and over. Really highly recommend it. When I was in my band days, we had problems with drummers similar to Spinal Tap, though none of them exploded, thankfully, or maybe not. But yeah, so we used to say we were the Spinal Tap of the Bay Area metal scene with all of our exploding drummers, and there's like you said, a lot to always go back to and revisit in that movie, and it's fantastic. It's done as a documentary style by Rob Reiner. Great flick. And for those that don't necessarily like the heavy metal genre, but prefer the rap genre, especially early rap, there's a movie that came out, I'm not sure it was late 80s, I think it's early 90s, but it's kind of a similar vein called Fear of a Black Hat. And that's also excellent and kind of the mockumentary kind of movie, and this one involves the rap scene. But either of those movies, I promise you, you will laugh your butt off and enjoy it immensely. I'm gonna switch gears here. Since we're doing comedies, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. And this is one of those movies I forgot about, and I recently rediscovered it, and I forgot how good it is. Even the special effects really hold up very well. And that's a movie called Young Sherlock Holmes. And just like the title sounds, it's talking about Sherlock Holmes kind of in like the high school era, where he meets Doctor, who would become his friend, who would become Dr. Watson sometime in the future. And it was like their first real adventure mystery together. I think Steven Spielberg was a producer on it. He didn't direct it, but to the best of my knowledge. But oh my God, it's one of those fantastic movies. I'm not even that big of a Sherlock Holmes fan, but it was really engaging, very interesting. You see where Sherlock Holmes got a lot of the trademark things that you remember from the books and the movies. And it was a very interesting take on it. So, if you've never seen that before, I highly recommend checking out Young Sherlock Holmes.
I've not been a big Sherlock Holmes fan either. That sounds interesting. I mean, the prequel stuff always intrigues me because I like to see how they tie in the story from what and sort of meld it into the story that you know. So that sounds cool. What did you like about it the most? What do you find fascinating about it?
Um, it was really interesting to see how, they explained kind of how his mind worked, like how he would view things and, very meticulous. And, I thought that was very interesting. Like I said, the special effects for the 80s still stand up. It's an interesting story. There's some action. And I really appreciated the growing friendship between Watson and Holmes. And, you kind of feeling like that was where everything began, their meeting and everything else, and what would become and, turn into a lifelong partnership. So I think there are a lot of different elements of that movie. And those are some of the things that really stick out to me. Like I said, highly recommend it.
Awesome. I'm going to also shift away from comedy, and I'm going to go with a movie that's become a bit of a cult classic, and it's called They Live. And it features a former WWF wrestler, Rowdy Ronnie Piper,
Roddy.
and Roddy. I always think it was
Roddy.
Ronnie.
That's Roddy.
Roddy. And who's unfortunately no longer with us. But I think this might have been his filming debut, if I'm not mistaken. And again, very, very classic film, and definitely become a cult flick. So much that South Park took a famous, really elongated fight scene, and they implemented it in their cartoon blow by blow. If you actually go onto the internet, onto YouTube, you can find where they're actually playing the scene from They Live and the scene from South Park, and yeah, it's literally blow by blow. It's the cripple scene. It's a cripple fight. I'm sorry. It's you got to check it out. It's amazing, but it's a good flick. It's a very good flick, and it stands in its own. I would definitely recommend it.
I think we saw it in the theaters together.
We did.
Yeah, and I remember that movie. And of course, I'm gonna give you the opportunity since it's your pick. What's the best line of the movie?
Oh man, it's let's see. You know the line. It's like
I came
I
here to kick ass and
there
chew
you go.
bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
There you go.
You
That is
can't
the
go wrong
famous
with
line
that.
from it.
I heard that. I actually read somewhere recently that Roddy Piper, originally the WWF was didn't want him to do that movie, and I think he quit over it. Feeling like, okay, I don't want them controlling me, and so he quit over that, so he could star in that movie. Um, don't know how true that is, but again, excellent movie, and it's a lot of the themes still stand up today, and that fight scene is definitely one of those classic fight scenes. A little long, but we'll let it be. I'm gonna again go stay away from the comedy because I got a couple more coming up, and this one on my list. Um, you kind of had a lot of the movies kind of late after the success of Rocky, they kind of played with that formula. And you had the Karate Kid, which was very successful and something we're going to talk about in a future episode. And you had other movies of that genre. And one that doesn't really get talked about anymore, but I think is just as good as the Karate Kid, maybe not as quotable, but just as good of a movie, is Vision Quest, and that's starring Matthew Modine. He's actually a high school wrestler who decides he wants to go down in a couple weight classes to fight this wrestler from another high school called Shoot. And Shoot apparently is undefeated. Everyone's afraid of this guy. And so Matthew Modine's character, Loden Swain, decides he's going to go ahead and drop the weight in an effort to face him. And his best friend, who is actually played by Jake Ryan of 16 Candles, forget the actor's name. I think he quit acting shortly after. He is supposed to be Indian, and he says, "What you're on is a vision quest." And so he is trying to work towards wrestling this guy. This is his vision quest. In the meantime, through circumstances, that he couldn't control, this woman who's a few years older than him, played by Linda Fiorentino, comes and stays at the family house. And of course, Loden's all gaga over her and wants to be with her. And, so you're dealing with, he wants to fight this guy, he wants to get with this girl, and all those things. It's a great movie. It also is the screen debut of Madonna. So she's actually in the movie. She's performing two songs in the movie. I think one was Gambler and the other one was Crazy for You. And in addition to being a really good movie, it has a fantastic soundtrack. They have Journey's Only the Young, which is my favorite Journey song. They have Dio in there with Hungry for Heaven, Red Rider with Lunatic Fringe. You got Madonna, and it's a fantastic soundtrack. Really great movie. If you haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while, revisit it, check it out. I think you'll enjoy it.
Dio in it. Wow, that's got me sold right there. I do remember seeing that a little bit. That's the kid, like he's wearing this really like heavy vinyl sort of like a workout suit or something, right? To try and
Yeah,
drop the
he's
weight.
using that to drop weight, using that to
Yes.
get rid of his weight. Don't recommend doing that. And, to drop the, water weight for wrestling.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember that. Don't remember Dio. I'll have to go back and check that out though, because everybody knows I'm a Dio fan.
Yes, you are.
Alrighty, well, I'm going to go with one that I actually just thought of now. I can't remember what it was that you said that triggered me on this movie, but it was done in the early 80s, and it's a movie called Brainstorm. And Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood. It was actually her last movie before she died. Great flick. It's basically about these scientists that have come up with a way to record your thoughts and then be able to play them back so that somebody else can experience what you were experiencing at that very time. And there was one of the scientists that knew that she had cancer, and I always assumed it was cancer. I'm not sure that they actually said what it was. And right before she dies, she puts this thing on to record what it's feeling like for her to die, and it becomes this whole controversy and top secret stuff that people don't want other people to see. It's a good movie, and if you like Christopher Walken, which I do, um, gotta have more cowbell. And yeah, great flick. And again, it was the last movie that Natalie Wood was in.
I don't think I've ever seen that movie.
Yeah,
I'll
good
check
flick.
it out. So I don't have much to offer in that regard. So, but we'll definitely check it out. Um, let's see. I'm gonna go back to comedy, and Steve Martin is one of those iconic figures. It's been some great movies, but for whatever reason, this one really doesn't get talked about or doesn't get remembered much. And that's my next pick, and that's Roxanne. It's basically kind of the retelling of the Cyrano de Bergerac tale. He is a firefighter in a local city, a little small city that has other than him, an all volunteer firefighting department. And yeah, so he meets this woman. It's kind of a romantic comedy, and he meets this woman played by Daryl Hannah, and he is trying to woo her, you know, and hilarity ensues, and I think it's one of those movies. It's very funny, but it's got a lot of heart too. So, and I think it kind of meant something for me. I remember seeing it many years ago when it came out on the 4th of July. I actually had gone out on 2 dates with this woman at the time, and we both were kind of like, we're not sure if this is a relationship for us. We didn't tell each other that at the time, but we were both thinking of it. And I think we both kind of felt separately that this was our last time we'd go out. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. We were going to cut our losses. We went out on 4th of July and saw this movie. Afterwards, we went to Foster City to see the fireworks. And yeah, and after that, became the first real serious relationship I was ever involved in. So, guys, let this be a hint to you. If you're ever, trying to woo a lady, I'll use that word again. I like it so much. Never use it, but I used it twice in this one. Find a romantic comedy where that person has a feature similar to your own. In this case, a larger nose, and take her to see it, and she'll see that person on the screen as a love interest and maybe see you as one too. So it worked out for me, and I'm no longer with that woman. It's been a lot of years, but very fond memories of that movie and that night. And great movie. Revisit it. Go see Roxanne. Check it out. Download it. You'll be glad you did.
Awesome. That is a good pick. And every time you said woo, I was having flashbacks to Ric Flair. Woo!
Got to put a
But
little more oomph in it than that, but okay. What do you got for me, Lewis?
Let's see what's next. So I'm going to take a little bit of a detour here. I'm going to go with movies that this isn't a comedy, but it might have been, might as well have been. I'm going to go with movies that I thought were maybe a little, well, next one, it'll actually be a little stupid. And I am talking about a movie called Jim Cotta. And Jim Cotta was a movie that came out right around, I think it was shortly after the Olympics in the 80s. And, all the gymnasts were riding hikes. They all won gold medals. And I can't remember, the only one I remember is like Mary Lou Retton. The other guys I don't remember, but that's the only name I remember.
I remember
But
Mitch
anyway, so,
Gaylord, but okay.
so, so I guess going on the success of their careers being in the Olympics, they decided that it would be a good idea to make a movie with some of the gymnasts, or maybe it was just one of the gymnasts. I don't remember. I just remember the specific scene where it was. Well, let me take a step back. Gymkata is supposed to be a form of martial arts that's mixed with like
Gymnastics.
gymnastics, thank you, and like karate or something like that, some form of martial arts. So I remember this one scene where this the star of the movie was stuck caught in an alley, and these thugs were coming to beat him up, and out of nowhere, like a miracle of God, there's this parallel bar that appears between the buildings, and he gets on it and he starts doing his flips and his spins, and he's kicking everybody's butt. And um horrible movie. Don't watch it. Watch it watch it if only you want to see it, like for the comedic relief part of it. Because that's probably worth some points, but other than that, stay away from it. um anyway. Yeah.
All right, so we were doing forgotten gems, but Lewis changes the topic, and there's a reason some of these movies are forgotten. Mine, they should be remembered. I'm glad I forgot that one. So yeah, I'm gonna close out my list. Um, some would argue, in terms of the '80s, who had a better career, Kurt Russell or this guy? And that guy is John Cusack, and he had some phenomenal '80s movies as well. And but this one never really gets talked about. I went to actually download it the other day. You can't even find it. I wanted some company put out a Blu-ray recently. It's sold out, and I've only seen it on eBay for like $90. And
Wow.
it's a movie called The Sure Thing. And in this movie, John Cusack plays a college student. Him and his best friend, they kind of go their separate ways for college. His best friend goes to, I think it was Los Angeles, and he goes somewhere on the East Coast. And so while his buddy's going to all these parties and girls in bikinis and everything, John Cusack's character is finding the girls to be a little stuffier on the East Coast, not really liking the kind of person he is, and he's kind of getting into a funk. So his best friend, who was played by Anthony Edwards, later to be in Revenge of the Nerds, would send him photos like of all these beautiful girls in California in bikinis, and he sends him a photo of Nicolette Sheridan, and a young Nicolette Sheridan, absolutely beautiful, and he says she is a sure thing. And so that obviously intrigues, a young hormonal college student, so much so that he decides to make the trip across country to get with Nicolette Sheridan, who's this sure thing. He ends up going with one of his female classmates, who's very stuffy and doesn't like him. And of course, hijinks ensue. They're going across country, things happen, and they both kind of fall for each other. She's actually going to the West Coast to meet up with her fiance. And so they kind of fall for each other. It's very funny. It's got a lot of heart. One of those movies I highly recommend. And then a little funny story about it. Me and my buddy, we always used to go to Captain Video in San Mateo. And back then they used to, actually rent movies. That place actually still exists, shockingly enough. And to promote their movies, they would send out these cardboard cutouts that could be displayed in the stores and everything to drum up some interest for movie rentals.
Sure.
And so for The Sure Thing, they had a cardboard life-size cutout of Nicolette Sheridan wearing this white bikini. She looks absolutely beautiful on the photo. And so we had asked one of the employees who we had gotten to know, we said, hey, when you guys are done with that, could we get it? And the girl's like, yeah, no problem. We'll save it for you. I'll put your name on it. So when we're done with it, you can pick it up. She goes, you're in here, fairly frequently. So I'll just let you know. And so the next time we went in, she goes, guys, I got bad news for you. Nicolette was stolen.
Oh
Stolen?
no.
What happened? And so apparently two guys in a pickup truck drove up. One, was a getaway driver. One ran in, grabbed the cardboard cutout of Nicolette Sheridan, threw it in the back of the truck, and they were out. And so was my Nicolette Sheridan cardboard cutout. There was no ransom note left. I wasn't, Nicolette was taken. I didn't have a particular set of skills in which to get her back. So I never did get my Nicolette Sheridan cardboard cutout. I'm sad to say, but The Sure Thing, great movie. You watch the fantastic John Cusack movies of the '80s, and there's a lot of them, and that one will stand up with any of them. So I highly recommend that for my last choice.
That's a bummer about the cardboard cutout. That would have been awesome to have.
Yes, and if I was you, I'd still have it. So
In cellophane.
in cellophane. No, it didn't come in cellophane. I hate to say. So maybe if it had, she would have survived. Who knows? But in this day and age, I would have just turned on eBay and found it in like 5 seconds. Somebody selling it. But yeah, it wasn't me and Nicolette. It wasn't to be. What
Good
you got,
deal,
Lou? You
man.
got your last pick, so make it good.
All right. Um, Again, I'm going sort of the ridiculous route on this one, and it's sort of a twofer, because it's sort of a trend that I remember seeing in the '80s, and I don't know if it's still going on now because I'm not that avid of a moviegoer, as you all know. Um, but so there was a movie called The Car back in the '80s, and it was about, and it was not a great movie. Again, sort of good for comic relief, but it was about a car that was possessed, and it was like this Lincoln that they'd taken and modified. It was all blacked out, and it was like the spawn of the devil or something. And this one guy's trying to make sure that it doesn't kill anybody or whatever. It was a ridiculous movie. So again, one of those ones that you probably want to watch just for the comedic value of it, if but it was intended to be a serious movie. But there was another one along the same time, and this is the trend that I wanted to talk about that I remember, called Christine. And that one was a little more mainstream that I know a lot of people are familiar with. And I always found it interesting that, and it seems like this started back in the '80s, that you'd see a movie that would come out and it would have certain subject matter, certain aspects of it, and then immediately after that you'd see another one that was just like it, right? And I could never figure that out. I was like, what, did they plan this? I mean, because they had to be filming the things at the same time, and never understood that. So anyway, getting back to the movies themselves, Christine was a pretty decent movie. I think it featured a '57 Chrysler, was it? I know it wasn't a Chevy. But same kind of premise. It's this car that's possessed, and that you can't kill it. You can't, it sort of repairs itself when it gets dented and whatnot. The car was a little darker than I think that one was. Same type of premise. So it's a car possessed from hell. So don't drive classic cars because you'll go to hell. There you go.
That's a takeaway from this, huh? And
That
who
is.
wrote Christine?
Have no idea.
Stephen King.
Ah, didn't know that.
Stephen King, yeah. So, and of course, I think his name is Keith Gordon. The lead in Christine was also in Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield and
Oh yeah.
some actor. I don't know whatever happened to him. Oh God. What was his name? Robert Downey Jr. I hope he had a good career. Maybe he got in maybe he was in a special episode of The Love Boat or something. I don't know, but hopefully he's doing okay financially. He's not destitute or anything like that.
I'm sure he's
So
fine.
before we leave, I'm wearing Bloodsport, another forgotten gem. I see Score on your shirt. You gotta show it.
There it is.
All
There
right.
it is.
And how true was that?
It's totally not. It's false advertisement.
All right. Well, if you really want some really good movies, check out my list. If you want some good movies and some pieces of crap, check out Lewis's Jim Cotta. Really? All right. But hey, what can you do? If there's some forgotten movies you think we should know about or revisit, please let us know about that. We'd love to hear your comments. If you love any of the movies we talked about, I'm sure we don't have any Jim Cotta fans out there. Let us know that as well. We'd love to hear about it. Before we sign off here, Lou, anything you want to add?
No, I'm good, man.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching as always. We are two dudes talking '80s, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Peace.